call this meeting to order. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We only have 2 items on the discussion agenda today, but I'm going to flip them. So let's do dual enrollment first, and then we'll end with the PCC financial controls presentation. So dual enrollment, start there.
Sure, I'll go ahead and kick us off. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see everyone. We want to talk today and have a study session dedicated to how we think about student engagement and particularly how we strengthen our dual enrollment strategy at the college. So one of the key themes that emerged during my first few months here at the college is really the need to deepen student engagement, and I think a critical part of that is strengthening our connection with local high schools so we can build stronger pipelines to the college and make more education more accessible to students earlier in their education, their educational journey. So I think a focus on our part is strengthening our management of early college opportunities, specifically dual enrollment. And while the college successfully met all the criteria in our recent Higher Learning Commission review, dual enrollment was an area of concern in our management thereof. Additionally, I think we need to really talk about the cost and the structure of that program. Currently, we do not charge tuition for dual enrollment, and today, among many things, we'll talk about the associated expense to ensure the sustainability of that program. So I want to make this point clear regarding dual enrollment, right? The goal is not to scale back dual enrollment, but to improve it, right? To improve that program. We see dual enrollment certainly as a viable, critical pathway to college success. And to that end, we are actively engaging our local school districts through talking with the superintendents. I'm meeting with a group of superintendents later this week. We have Superintendent Gastelum here this afternoon to talk with the board from the high school perspective. So we want to gather input, and that will shape our strategy moving forward. Ultimately, we want to ensure that high school students have access to high-quality college-level courses. And so I think this is a strong beginning, Mr. Chair, of a broader conversation about how we move forward together in making that vision a reality. And happy to turn it back over to the board or bring up our first facilitator.
Any questions or comments before we get started? No? All right, yeah, wherever you want to start, Chancellor.
So, good evening, Board Person Taylor, Board Chancellor Nassy, colleagues and guests. I'm Emily Halverson-Otts. I am the Acting Vice Provost of Academic Access. So I will be presenting on dual enrollment along with Dr. David B. and Sunnyside School District Superintendent Jose Gastelum. But before I get into the presentation, I also wanted to just acknowledge a few individuals who helped gather some data for this presentation. So Ann Martin and Starr was critical in providing a recent addition to this. And the benchmarking was started by Melissa Stoddard, who is the Director of compliance in additional locations, and she provided the baseline, which I added to as well. So I wanted to make sure I acknowledged my colleagues who helped support this presentation. So we have a roadmap today of the topics that we will be discussing. We're going to provide an overview of dual enrollment. I'm going to speak to the trends and some of the data here, both nationally and internally. Superintendent Gastelum will then speak to the high school perspective of dual enrollment, and then we'll turn it over to Dr. David B., who will speak to benchmarking and the financial overview of dual enrollment. Dual enrollment is a fabulous opportunity for our high school going students to experience college courses. It is an opportunity for us to expand college access and to support a college-going mindset in this student population. It helps them envision themselves as going to college. And it is really about providing these opportunities through high-quality educational experiences. And so specifically, dual enrollment provides pathways to college credit. And so students engage in taking courses that lead to their educational pathway while earning college credit. It is that high-quality instruction at the high schools, and as an institution, we are working to ensure that there's that academic oversight that Chancellor Nassy spoke to, and ensuring that all students are having what is an equivalent college experience at the high schools. We also aim to have a seamless college experience for those students so that they are taking these college courses, recognizing that they are college students in the high school. They are proud of that fact, and then they move on and transition into preferably Pima, right, or at the university. And the last opportunity is that they can make significant progress towards degrees and credentials of values. So some students are able to complete an actual credentialed certificate, while others are able to take significant number of courses towards their associates. And in some areas and in some institutions and states, they are able to complete their entire associates before they even graduate from college or from high school, excuse me. So Pima dual enrollment is actually serves over 60 high schools in Pima and Santa Cruz counties. And so this is just a smattering of all of those school districts. And I wanted to point out that you'll see I've labeled the number of Title I schools in these school districts, as that is some important data that we'll be talking about later as well. So we have everything from Tucson Unified, Sunnyside, Flowing Wells, Marana, Vail, Santa Cruz, and Nogales, and many, many more. Again, it is over 60 high schools in Pima and Santa Cruz counties that we serve. In terms of national trends, there are actually 2.5 million students in the 2022-2023 school year taking dual enrollment. This ended up being superseded by what they anticipated significantly, as the prior year was around 1.5 million. So it was an additional 1 million in 1 year. And that is by IPEDS, which is the Institutional Post-Secondary Education Department, Education Data Science Data. I'm going to stop there because I've forgotten what it all stands for now. And so that's a significant number of students when you consider all of the students that are attending community colleges. There's 2.5 million dual enrollment students. Granted, it was in the 2022-2023 year. They haven't completed the data analysis for last year, but we would expect that that number is only continuing to grow based on current statistics and trends. And as we've said, dual enrollment students are taking college credits, and there's lots of data showing that those students are more likely to graduate high school, enroll, and earn a college degree, even higher wages. In fact, here in Arizona, they speak to the fact that students are more likely to persist in their educational journey in college if they have taken dual enrollment. And it helps to support our very diverse population of students here in the community. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit more detail here in a moment. As you can see, dual enrollment has exploded in growth. And so this was under the prior chancellor. He had really charged the dual enrollment team with growing, and they have done a fabulous job of serving our community and providing these dual enrollment opportunities to the over 60 high school students, or high school school districts, excuse me. If you look at this trend in 2019, there was around 3,600. The head count is the number I wanted to pick, which is the 3,600. And, no, that's enrollment, sorry. That 3,600 is enrollment. Head count is 2,200. And it has boomed up to almost 67,000 or 6,700 head count now. And so we have more than doubled in that time period from 2019 to 2025. You can also see that the enrollment is around 12,000 students. That's a lot of students that this small but mighty team has been supporting here in Pima Community College.
Emily, can we pause there for a second?
Yes,
Any
we
questions on the data on this slide from the board?
Do we have a slide later on, and I guess I can go through it, that presents the financial equivalent to it? Like if these were actual students, what would be enrolled? Do we have financials associated with it?
We do not specifically have that data statistic for you here, but that is something we certainly can get for you. And I didn't bring up a piece of paper, so I'm hoping
No worry, we'll
someone
follow
will
up
write
later.
that down. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a couple, just real quick.
Yes.
Unless anybody else know? You said early that some states allow associate degrees to be awarded to dual enrollment students. I remember from our previous presentation, you were talking about if Pima did that there were students, but presumably Arizona is one of the states that would theoretically allow us to do that, right?
Yes, as well.
Okay. And then the 60 some odd high schools that you said, and you can, if you're going to address this later, you can feel free to defer this, but I'm just curious, like what criteria were used to select those high schools versus presumably the ones that we aren't working with? Yeah.
Yeah. So I will provide an answer, but I also realize I forgot to acknowledge that the dual enrollment team, part of the dual enrollment team is here. And since I was put in the position in September, I might not be able to speak to that historical component of your question. And so I'm going to introduce them now since I forgot to do that earlier. Dean James Palacios is here, the Dean of Dual Enrollment. Chris Bell is also here, the Director of Dual Enrollment, and Carolina Sistiega, who is the Program Manager of Dual Enrollment. So if you all shook your hand. So I might have to defer to them. To answer your question to the best of my ability, it is really those that are willing and those that have had faculty who are able to be certified through our certification process and that can teach. What we're finding here in Pima County and Santa Cruz is that more of the high schools are actually shifting away from AP to dual enrollment. And it is part of that culture building that's also been happening over a period of time. And so the schools have recognized that dual enrollment is this opportunity for these students to get college credit as they pass the course. Whereas AP means you have to take an exam, you have to pay for the exam, you have to get a score on that exam, and the university has to accept that. And so they're recognizing that that is not providing the best services for their student population. So that's this cultural shift in terms of AP towards dual enrollment. It's been a big part of the dual enrollments team is educating the schools on these opportunities as well. But the sticking point is how I'll put it, is really finding those qualified instructors that meet our minimum qualifications that can also teach in the high school. Did I miss anything? Yeah, and the qualifying score for the AP exam has to be very specific. It's outlined by the subject matter experts in those degree areas. And so if you do well, it doesn't mean that that specific department at the university is also going to accept it. Yeah.
And you mentioned here, just a follow-up question about the qualified instructor. So who's determining the criteria of what makes a qualified instructor? Are we, or is that the HLC, or is there some other entity?
Yeah, so the HLC has established the criteria or the guidelines for how we go about the process of qualifying our instructors. Those guidelines are then given to the subject matter experts, which are our faculty, and the faculty determine the actual qualifications. There are several different approaches on how they can be certified. The most straightforward approach is the fact that you have a master's in that subject matter area that you want to teach in, or you have a master's plus 18 units in that particular area. Then more recently, the HLC has expanded faculty qualifications to include alternative routes such as teaching experience, experience in business and industry, but that again is all determined by the faculty here at Pima as to what they believe will result in an individual that has subject matter expertise that is in alignment with the courses we are going to be teaching. Again, to ensure that the course is a college equivalent course.
Gotcha. And do you happen to know, is that criteria consistent across the different accrediting bodies? Like if you went to the HLC versus, I don't know what you all used in Florida before you came here, but is it the same in each one of those bodies, or is it different? Do they disagree with each other?
I actually do not know that. I would assume based on what the qualifications are that they are very similar, but I cannot speak to that definitively.
Yeah. May not be exactly the same, but it's a similar criteria. But again, the institution and most regional accreditation bodies, Higher Learning Commission, Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, give the institution, to Emily's point, that leeway, right? They'll provide some guidelines and a framework. And so I do think that's an interesting area of exploration, though, right? It's hard to find someone with a master's in chemistry teaching high school, right? And, that we should look closely at, what colleges are doing to credential faculty. But ultimately and traditionally, right, it's been a faculty decision, right? Who is capable of teaching these courses? So,
Thing I will add is that the accrediting bodies specifically state it is in the hands of our faculty body to determine what those qualifications are and should be.
Thank you. Yeah, Carla, go ahead.
I have another question that relates to the data you provided. And maybe you'll mention it a little bit more specifically later, but when you talked about the headcount and enrollment, I was looking at the slides ahead and you mentioned the matriculation of students after their enrollment, dual enrollment has ended. I actually see a decrease from 2024 to 2025. If you could explain that, and then tell me how those numbers compare and how you see the trend going moving forward.
Yeah. I will answer that question once we get to that, just so that everyone can see that visual. I had already planned on answering that as well. Okay.
Any other questions?
I just have one follow-up. So if we're offering associate's degrees, that means that the entire program will be offered, and so those high school sites will have to be special,
Additional locations.
meaning the $10,000 or $50,000, whatever it is that the HLC charges. And is that realistic, do you think? And I'm wondering, I don't want us to tell people that, Pima wants to offer dual enrollment so you can get an associate's when you're in high school if really we're not willing to, do those extra requirements that the HLC calls for.
Yeah, so we have 28 additional locations already. 15 of those are dual enrollment. The other locations are places like Davis-Monthan, Santa Cruz, the 29th Street, right? And some of them are prisons. And so we have a variety of additional locations. They do not cost that much to become an additional location. There is a $1,000 fee associated with the application. The application takes us about 9-12 months to submit. We can only submit 3 of them at a time to the Higher Learning Commission for review. It does add to our annual fees, though, with the Higher Learning Commission. And then I would say the bigger challenge is the resources that we as a college put into supporting it, because it's not as much financial, but it is more along the lines of the wraparound services, the support going into the schools, and our own capacity. And again, all of this, though, is to ensure that high-quality educational experience for those students.
All right, any other questions? No? Please go ahead, continue.
Okay. So this is some of our dual enrollment student demographic data here at Pima Community College. This was pulled from our dashboard, and so if you want to dig into the dual enrollment data further, you can just go to pima.edu, type in dashboards, and there is one for dual enrollment. And so this is a screenshot from that particular dashboard. And what you will see is that we have our race, ethnicity is, we are largely serving our Hispanic Latina population as well as our white non-Hispanic population to the largest degree. And then we have some that are unknown. That's the next largest category. And that really has to do with our ability to capture that data from those students, right? And as you can imagine, we have some high school students who are filling out applications. Maybe they don't know what to write. How are we capturing that data? And so I'm going to briefly diverge. This is an opportunity for us at Pima to work with, and we have been working with the registrar's office to revamp the application so we can collect better data. And I wanted to touch on that here as well, because some of our data is limited based on what we've currently collected. We need to do a better job at capturing that through things like the application. You can see gender as well as age, and you'll see that the majority of our students are 17 to 18, but we also have 16 and below. And it's important to recognize that within the last few years, the state allowed the expansion of dual enrollment to include freshmen. And so freshmen up through seniors can take dual enrollment, and that's why that population is starting to slowly expand. But the majority of our students tend to be the juniors and the seniors taking dual enrollment. And the not very clear blue line is a link directly to the dashboard, by the way. There's also over 25 Title I schools that we are serving. And I think that's really important to indicate, because that gives us a good sense of that student population that we are helping to serve. From that, I'm going to make some inferences that we recognize. Again, they're inferences based on data that we don't know definitively. We're going to assume that a lot of them are going to be our first generation students based on current college attainment here in Pima County. We're going to assume that many of them are also low socioeconomic status, because we tend to rank between 5th and 6th poorest county of our size in the country. And so we can start to recognize and get a sense of what our dual enrollment students that are taking college credit. And what's important to also recognize is that if we were to think about this demographic, many of them would not likely pursue college after high school. If you are aware, only 43% of our high school seniors are really going on to college. And so this lifts them up in terms of, hey, I can do college. Again, that college going mindset, I've got college credit, and we can keep on going. The other thing I wanted to point out is that nationally, most students that are in race ethnicity of African American, Black, Hispanic, and Latina are not taking advantage of dual enrollment. They're not taking advantage of going on to college. And granted, we have to recognize that our demographics here in Arizona reflect what our demographics are in our dual enrollment student population, but it's important to recognize that we're helping address those national trends with at least the Hispanic Latina population. So this is the data that I was referring to that Ann Martin and Starr pulled for me very recently, so wanted to give her that acknowledgement. And so this is our students that were dual enrollment, came immediately to Pima after they graduated high school. And so, as was pointed out, there is and I don't know that that's is that, nope. Maybe this? Okay. All right, I don't see a laser on this. Anyway, you can see what appears to be starting to trend downward.
I think it's
It did get moved. It's trending downward, right? And that's really because we're still in that 2024-2025 school year. We haven't captured all of the data, so it's incomplete data. We do expect it to continue to move upwards, or at least be equivalent in terms of where that number of students that are coming to Pima. And I think that this is a great opportunity to connect to the Chancellor's 100 Days of really also showing that we can go into those schools and work on capturing and recruiting those students even further. What I did want to also point out is that sometime in the month of April, we are doing a visit to Sunnyside School District, and we already have 220 students that are committed to coming to Pima. And so we're going to register them, enroll them, and so that's an exciting opportunity and an opportunity for us as an institution to keep doing more of this, where we go to the schools and have almost these enrollment signing days in the schools. You can see there's our feeder schools. We have a variety of them: Tucson Magnet, Desert View, Sunnyside, Ironwood, and so forth. And so these tend to be our higher populations that come directly to Pima.
real quick, Emily.
Yes.
I want to point out to the board a couple things. So if you just look at the raw numbers here, right, on that growth of dual enrollment slide, right, so in 2024, around 6,000 dual enrollment students. And then on this slide, students who had graduated, right, they'd finished, about 800 here at the college who have dual enrollment. So it's not like everyone who gets dual enrollment, right, matriculates. And I get it, it's different years and stuff, but just, I thought that's important, just to have a sense of scale between those taking dual enrollment and those taking dual enrollment and ending up at Pima.
Can I ask a quick question? Out of curiosity, do these students coming in, let's say you're registering May, are they participating in the Summer Bridge program?
I assume you're referring to the Summer Bridge program that we're doing with Sunnyside School District, or are you talking about just in general before I articulate?
Either one. So they are participating in a Summer Bridge to connect them to the campuses?
Yeah, and so as part of the tri-school partnership that Pima has with Sunnyside School District and the University of Arizona, we are working to expand a Summer Bridge program for students within the district and also targeting those dual enrollment students. I know also that Jeff Tees has, the Dean of College Readiness and Student Success, has worked on these student bridge programs for a number of years, and he has been opening it up to whoever will take it. It tends to sometimes be a challenge because students are like, we just graduated, I don't want to come back and take more school. And so there's some opportunities to encourage more students to come. They, under Jeff Tees, it is often a STU course, which we know are free courses, and so the students have an opportunity to start working on their own student success metrics. But I would also add that it's an overall opportunity, and we are modeling off of Dr. T's work to expand that further.
I have
But-
one last question.
Real quick, though, but in general, I want to clarify this, right? The students that you're looking at here, no, not all of them have participated in a summer
Yes.
bridge. We're trying to build out summer bridge and expand it, but no, that's not consistent
Yeah.
across all dual enrollment in high schools.
Sorry if that wasn't clear.
It kind of was, but thank you for
Okay.
clarifying that. I have one last question, but I don't know if you're the correct person or if you have the information. Do these students coming in have the financial literacy about FAFSA, about the process? And does this program in any way, shape, or form impact their financial aid status when they actually become students?
I am definitely not the individual to answer that question. What I know that we have been working on is talking to them about some financial literacy, but I cannot speak to that definitively. So,
Thank you.
Hi. Yes, so the financial aid and outreach team does do workshops at the high schools fairly frequently. Normally the dual enrollment team works with them to coordinate that, and they do a lot of them throughout the year. Additionally, yes, the classes that they do take in dual enrollment can impact their satisfactory academic progress once they come to Pima.
Thank you.
yes, and we've been discussing the need to make sure that that is clear for students, that it could impact their satisfactory academic progress as well.
I have sort of a question, probably from the previous stuff, but it just popped into my head as you were talking, and maybe it would be answered if I could just get a list of, it doesn't have to be right now, but if someone can email me a list of all the high schools that we have dual enrollment programs in. But I was thinking about some of the particularly rural parts of the county, like say Ajo and Y, like on the far western edge. I don't know if we have some kind of dual enrollment program out there, but those would be students who it would be difficult to access Pima in general. I mean, they're probably equidistant between us and Arizona Western, to be quite frank, because it's about 2 hours either way. But it might be an interesting strategy to try to get more of what we do to some parts of the county that are less geographically accessible to Metro Tucson, where most of our campuses are.
We do serve several schools out in that vicinity, and I have the names off the top of my head, but I don't want to misspeak, so I'm going to defer to someone on the dual enrollment team.
And we'll get you the list, for sure, the complete list for the whole board.
Hello, how are you? James Palacios here. I'm glad to be here. We do have Bubba Kovari, who's out there that we serve. We did not, and also Ajo, but we did not renew our IGA last year because they did not request any courses. But if they do want to come back and add courses to their list, then we would initiate a renewal of an intergovernmental agreement for them. But what's hard for them is there's a lot of teachers that are not qualified, do not have a master's in that area, which makes it tough for us to find qualified instructors out there. Hopefully, in the near future, we can create some sort of online platform for them to have access to dual enrollment, but at this point, we're still in the beginning stages of developing that part of the program.
And does the dual enrollment credit transfer to the other? So for example, let's say I was a student at Ajo. I did take a dual enrollment course. I got credit from Pima. I decide, you know what, I really want to go to Arizona Western. They can transfer that over. Okay.
College credit is college credit. And I do want to say that as far as like financial aid, they do come into any of the universities or college as a new freshman, first-time freshman. So it's still, they could still take the take advantage of the benefits of a freshman coming into a college environment.
If I may, sorry. If at some point I could have an update about the online platform that he spoke about, especially considering Ajo. Thank you.
An update on the online platform that James just referenced?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just say that's very much a work in progress right now. So we are working on establishing some guidelines and criteria for that. So Thank you, James. Those were the two schools, but I knew I was going to mispronounce one of them, so I didn't want to do that. So thank you. What else? What other questions do you have?
Any other questions? No?
I don't have a question, but I do want to point out that I'm looking at this portal where the link was included in the presentation. This is amazing. So if anybody hasn't seen it yet, this is really great. I have not. This is my first time. But there's a lot of data, and you can really kind of play around with it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I've asked to add to it so that we could pull out even further, look at more of these trend lines for matriculation. Because right now you have to look at it by individual high school and each year. And so how can we look at it in a more aggregated but also disaggregated view? But yeah, it's some excellent data. So this slide is duplicative in that the students that are here being enrolled at Pima, they took dual enrollment credit, but it's every year after that that they are continuing to be here at Pima. And so I think it is significant that we speak to this data in that we are always looking at what is our enrollment, what is our enrollment opportunities, thinking also about that persistence and retention of our students. And again, the data has a little asterisk at the end because it starts to level off a little bit because of the same thing as I mentioned before, in that we are the 2024-2025 school year is still going on, so we haven't fully captured all of the data. And part of that has to do with the fact that those students, our dual enrollment students, many of them are in a year-long class that will end, and we'll capture that data in June. And so we'll have more accurate data later in this calendar year. And as you have probably heard previously, dual enrollment students, both as actual dual enrollment students and here at Pima, do make up a significant portion of our enrollment. So with that, you can see that the trend in dual enrollment is continuing to increase. The goal is to provide that high-quality educational experience to this very diverse population that really needs us to serve them. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Jose Gastelum, who's going to give you his perspective on dual enrollment.
Good evening. Thank you, Ms. Emily Halverson-Otts, Board Chair Taylor, members of the board, Chancellor Nassi, and members of the audience. Thanks for having me today. My name is Jose Gastelum. I'm the proud superintendent of Sunnyside Unified School District and a proud product of Sunnyside High School, Sunnyside District, Pima Community College, and the University of Arizona. So I feel very grateful and blessed to have this opportunity to serve a community who's served me as well. I appreciate you allowing me to speak today because I believe so strongly in the power of education to transform our students' lives and impact our community. Dual enrollment is a powerful opportunity to accomplish these goals. So I have two critical messages today. One is that Sunnyside does invest substantially in dual enrollment, and it's a shared cost with Pima Community College. The second piece is the value and impact of dual enrollment in our community. So nationally, we know that there are a variety of models to support dual enrollment. In some states, the state pays the most of the cost of dual enrollment. In others, there's a combination of state, student, and district funding. In Arizona, the state does not really fund dual enrollment. We have been grateful to have partnered with Pima College to share the cost of dual enrollment. And we're appreciative for the partnership with Pima College for the work that they do to support dual enrollment. So Pima, they staff partners with our staff to complete the registration of our students. They make site visits to teachers and ensure they have the information they need to teach dual enrollment curriculum with fidelity. They work with teachers to ensure that grades and course learning objectives are posted at the end of each semester. In Sunnyside, our support for dual enrollment is also both financial and in kind. Our counselors, administrators, and district staff work closely with Pima to make sure that we are implementing programs with fidelity and advising students correctly. In Sunnyside, we also invest actual dollars in dual enrollment. We pay all of the cost of the instructors, the salary and benefits. We provide all classroom space at no charge and cover the cost of facility usage, both for classes offered during the regular school day and for classes during the extended day for which we receive no state funding. We purchase textbooks as needed and supply our students with laptops and internet access when course materials are delivered via D2L. Although we realize our students are able to access other services at Pima, for the most part, it is our staff who provides tutoring and advising. Our teachers often do double duty, posting grades in 2 different systems and learning Pima systems such as using simple syllabus and D2L. As you know, one of the greatest challenges is finding teachers who meet the requirements of each division. To address that, we have set aside district funds and private donations to support our teachers who need to take additional coursework in order to qualify to teach dual enrollment classes. We cover the cost of any required industry certifications that are required in many of our CTE classes. We purchase specialized equipment as needed, which when we are talking about CTE classes such as machine tool technology can be very expensive. Science labs also require specific and sometimes expensive equipment. For example, we are currently working with Pima to add chemistry to our dual enrollment course offerings. After Pima staff came to visit the classroom, we were given a lengthy list of improvements we needed to make the lab facility in order for the course to be approved. We agreed. We are now in the process of making all those improvements at our cost. In short, dual enrollment is expensive. Why do we invest so heavily in dual enrollment? For many of the same reasons Pima does. We believe strongly that dual enrollment is good for students and good for the community. Our commitment and our partnership with Pima are yielding excellent results. Our enrollments have increased and our students are being successful. In the last 4 years, the number of students taking dual enrollment classes has grown from 577 to 894 students. Many of our students take more than one class. Therefore, enrollment courses have increased by over 800. In 2021, our students earned just over 3,500 credits. This year, we are on track to earn 6,051 credits. We have invested in Pima College dual enrollment and persisted through the changes in Pima College's systems for 3 main reasons. First, our students are primarily first-generation college students. While our post-secondary enrollment has increased, many of our students still wonder if college is really meant for them. There's a piece we talk about a lot with our students, and it's this piece of imposter syndrome, right? And so we believe that by offering our students the opportunity to complete a college course in a more familiar environment, we empower them to truly understand that, yes, they can be successful in college. Second, our high schools are designed to allow students to explore career pathways through our college and career academies. We offer courses like culinary, emergency medicine, automotive, healthcare, and more, most of which are aligned to Pima's centers of excellence. We were honored to have Chancellor Nassy visit our academies and see the clear connections between our programs. We offer a high number of dual credit classes because we encourage students not just to explore a career field, but to pursue a career pathway. For example, in 2022, since 2022, we have been working with a partnership with Pima College to build out a complete pathway in machine tool and technology. Together, we have our first cohort of students who are currently on track to earn an associate's degree in May of 2026. This is huge for our students and our community. Finally, for many years, more of our graduates enrolled at a 2-year school, mostly Pima, then at a 4-year school. Since 2020, that enrollment has flipped. We went from sending 33% of our students for a 2-year to only 16% in 2021. Meanwhile, our 4-year enrollment has nearly doubled from 14% in 2019 to a new high of 26%. With a shared investment in dual enrollment, two-year enrollment is creeping back up and was at 20% last year. This year, we began a tri-school partnership with Pima College and the University of Arizona. We share the goal of education forward, to have 60% of adults in Arizona hold a credential or degree by 2030, a goal which could realize an additional $5 billion in economic gains in Arizona. Our goal in Sunnyside is to at least have 60% of students enroll in post-secondary program. With your continued support, I know we can make this happen. We all know that college is expensive, whether you're pursuing a degree, a credential, or a certificate. We have worked through many challenges together, and I hope we can continue to do so. However, for our district, assigning tuition to dual enrollment classes would be a barrier that would significantly limit the work we are doing together. I have heard people talk about the cost of advanced placement classes, but our students, they usually qualify for fee waivers from the College Board and from the state of Arizona. The missing funding source for dual enrollment is not the school districts or the students, but the state of Arizona. The missing funding source, I'm sorry, let me repeat that. The missing funding source for dual enrollment is not the school districts or the students, but the state of Arizona. We have to work together to ensure that while they are in high school, at least we continue to keep the cost as far away from the students as possible. Is there any questions?
I have, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for both your and Sunnyside's investment in dual enrollment, and also for your time with us today. I really appreciate hearing your perspective, and not that I don't appreciate everybody that comes to present, but all the folks that work for the college kind of have to be here, and you don't, so it's an extra appreciation for spending some extra time with us. I want to follow up on the last thing you said, because one of the questions, and thank you for addressing it, that was one of the questions in my mind, because we haven't really ever dived deep into it, but we've sort of bandied about this idea that maybe there needs to be some kind of tuition paid, whatever that might be, for high school students who are getting college credit through dual enrollment. Just so I understand your perspective on here, are you saying that any level of tuition payment would be prohibitive, or you think it would be too much of a barrier for your students, or is there some level that would make sense, or would there need to be some like financial need-based sliding scale, or I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, well, to be, frank, my thoughts are to keep, any cost away from students. I realize that there is cost with this, right? It's not free, although we do a lot of shared expenses. I do have some ideas in regards. I know there's a $1,000 application fee. Like, those are some of the things that we can help with. I also realize that we both have foundations. If there comes to a point where there needs to be a cost, I think we just need to get creative in terms of partnering our foundations and really limiting the cost to, if there was a cost passed on to families or students. And so I think there's a lot of ideas. I haven't really followed all your board meetings in regards to the discussions that have taken place, but I think when you start adding fees and students are having to pay fees, then you start putting up barriers, no matter what the cost is. And we see that with some of the costs, low-level costs that we have for, let's say, summer school. For many years, we didn't have to charge for summer school because we had COVID funds, right? Those are gone, so there is a small fee now. But we work with families. We don't turn any student away. If there is a challenge in paying a fee, that doesn't prohibit the student from attending. We find a way to help out those students that are having those issues.
Thank you, and we jointly sing the song of woe about the lack of state funding, so yeah, we appreciate that. Any questions or comments from the rest of the board?
I don't have a question, but I want to echo the sentiment. Thank you so much for taking the time to come here today, because I knew about dual enrollment. I had no idea the investment that the school district is making in the success and the success not only of the program but of the students. So thank you personally, and thank you to the Sunnyside School District and the foundations that are making sure this happens, because I had no idea how much money you all are investing in the program as well.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. I mean, and lastly, I'll just leave you with this. I mean, dual enrollment has been such a game changer for our students. I mean, when you talk about imposter syndrome and they start earning some of these college credits, taking these college courses, they build this confidence that they are college material, especially for our first generation college going students. And so there's light at the end of the tunnel for them when you start showing them programs of studies and how many credits they've earned and how far ahead they are. And I believe Mr. Palacios mentioned it, when they start, they still start as freshmen, right? And, we have all of our students applying for FAFSA pretty much, and so it definitely has been a game changer for a lot of our students. And I mentioned this earlier in terms of how our college and career academies at both our comprehensive high school, Sunnyside and Desert View High School, just go hand in hand with the centers of excellence that you have here in Pima. So we got some great partnerships going there. And so I do appreciate the partnership, Chancellor Nassy, and the efforts that have been put forth to assist Sunnyside and other districts in really bridging this gap in terms of having some sort of summer bridge program, because we do lose students from the time they graduate from high school to when college starts for them. And so it is key to have this bridge of doing the handoff and making sure that they have these summer school opportunities and they start meeting people, seeing, matching faces with names, and know that there is resources there to support them. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that, and I just want to say I wholeheartedly agree. I am a product of that summer bridge program that Pima provided for me at the West Campus, and it was the perfect way for me to remove that imposter syndrome and felt like I belonged. So I agree with you. I'm a big proponent of that summer bridge.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? All right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dave, are you up next?
Good evening, Chairperson Taylor, members of the board, Chancellor Nassy, colleagues, guests. I'm bringing up the tail end of the presentation on dual enrollment to sort of summarize in a very quick and simple way the costs associated with it and some revenue potential. As we've discussed in the budget planning meetings that we've been having, the college provides significant resources to support dual enrollment. We at no charge to students right now, and obviously the high schools, as you just heard, they themselves also put a major financial commitment in. So in terms of the colleges, this is again a very simplistic way to sort of summarize what the cost investment is for the college. But this chart shows that the direct expenses, that's just salaries and wages for the staff who are associated with providing the support for dual enrollment. It's a little bit over $1 million a year at this point. Easy to say that there's also the indirect costs associated with supporting those staff members in the program would be another $500,000. Again, it's a simple estimate, but it's probably pretty accurate. As was discussed by Emily earlier, some of the direct costs, not only are there salaries and wages for staff, but there are HLC-related expenses, and then obviously you have to provide the support for the staff. Those would be the more indirect costs. So total costs are about $1.6 million. The college has not charged for dual enrollment. The college over time has been committed to providing dual enrollment to our community. I think it's one of the best things that we have going. And I think we're all in agreement that it would be lovely if the state provided the support. So now let me tell you a little bit of history about that. Back in the early 2000s, up and through the early 2000s, dual enrollment was provided, was considered to be FTSE funding, just like any other enrollment. And at the time, the college received a little over $1,000 per FTSE. So if we were having dual enrollment students, $1,000 per FTSE, so full-time equivalent is 30 credits. Right, so when you're looking at some of the things, you got to sort of translate down. But what happened over time is initially in the early 2000s and into the later 2000s, to the decade of the 2000s, the state started considering dual enrollment. They were concerned that there was double funding happening, that the state was providing funding for the high schools as well as for the colleges for the same enrollment. That was a perception, it wasn't reality. The college at the time worked with the other Arizona colleges to sort of assure that that was the case. It got into defining that dual enrollment had to be for students who already were taking, if I remember it, this is a little bit of memory, I think that taking a base of 5 classes so that they were already considered full-time students for the K-12 system. So then a dual enrollment class was above that. And so therefore they weren't paying anything extra to the high schools, and then the funding could come to the state. So that happened for a little while. Then we went into the fiscal crisis, and one of the mechanisms that came out of the fiscal crisis is they cut the funding for dual enrollment. Again, remember the state at that time wasn't supportive of providing funding, so it was one of the mechanisms. They cut the funding for dual enrollment in half. So dual enrollment FTSE started counting as half of what a regular FTSE counted. Then, tick, 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 as you know, unfortunately, Pima and Maricopa were essentially cut out of state funding, so we got to the point where we were essentially getting 0 funding for dual enrollment. I want to back up a little bit and say historically a little bit of context. You saw the huge, enormous growth in dual enrollment that Emily's slide showed. That shows how committed the college has been to increasing the support for dual enrollment in the last number of years. But I want to put a little bit of additional context on it. Back in the early the 2011, when the college's enrollment peaked, dual enrollment was about 1% of our FTSE. It's now about 9% of our FTSE. So this is a significant proportion of the total FTSE that we educate at the college. So you see that it's sort of things have changed dramatically. The college has been absorbing and supporting dual enrollment, absorbing the cost of it over time as you know, a service to the community. But the challenge of this is we're all financially challenged. We're not getting state funding. We have other resource limitations and so forth. So the idea is there some way that we can balance the costs out with it? And that's what we've been talking about. The good news is the last year the state had grant funding support. Essentially, it was grant funding support that was based on need for students. And so the colleges that didn't provide, that didn't charge students were able to get reimbursed from the state for certain need-based students. So it wasn't all dual enrollment students, it was some share of them. Last year, and you see the state funding line there, we were reimbursed to the tune of about $800,000. That really helps. And that is, as we've talked about when we're talking about the budget upcoming, the Arizona colleges have put in one of the requests in the budget is to continue providing support for dual enrollment. We're hopeful. I mean, I'm going to say hopeful. I'm not optimistic, but I want to be hopeful. The best case scenario is that the state would provide funding to help us offset our costs. Again, the state budget situation is tenuous. They're very worried about the federal situation and the federal uncertainty and the costs that might be shifted from the federal government to the state government. So there's a lot of uncertainty going on. Nevertheless, we have put in, the state community colleges have all put in requests to try and get funding for dual enrollment. That would be the best case scenario. And so we're watching that closely as the appropriations come up, and we've talked with the board about that. Should that not come to pass, and again, there's reasons to be concerned that that might not come to pass, then the question is do we want to go out and find supplemental funding that would help with dual enrollment? Obviously, gifts from the foundation, donors, that would be lovely too. State first, donor second. Last case, what we would like to do is get the support from students. On the chart gives you an idea of what we've talked about before. Board Member Morales, this might get to your question. The full tuition measure, so that's if we charge normal in-state tuition for dual enrollment, that would generate about $3.3 million. I think that was the question you were asking earlier. We've talked about doing something less, and we provided in this, I'm not going to go through the benchmarking information for you all, but we provided it in this in the packet for you. Again, Emily mentioned that her group put the benchmarking information together. I've also talked with my colleagues, so some colleges charge some charges share like a lower level tuition. And so these are the different scenarios that we've talked about. Full tuition would generate $3.3 million. Half tuition, so that would be more like $50 a credit, would be $1.6 million. And then if you did something more like a flat charge per course, that would generate about $600,000. So those would be different mechanisms that we could employ in the future that would help recover some of the costs to provide the support. So that's my share of the dual enrollment. I think that I'll open it. If you had questions for me on the financial end or any other dual enrollment, others can jump up and help.
Any questions or comments? Yeah. Cool.
The slide with the total cost, 1.6 million, is that the cost for us?
Correct. Does
So
not include any of the costs
what the
that
dis- what
the
the
superintendent was just mentioning.
So if we were to charge full tuition, we'd make money. If we charged
Yes.
half, break even.
That's about right, yeah.
And just so I'm understanding, the 1.5, 1.6, whatever it was on the other slide. So if we got 780,000 in state funding, essentially the difference between those two numbers is basically like what we're subsidizing the dual enrollment program.
How much,
just so I'm understanding
we
it.
were supporting in the last year. And again, prior to this last year, all of it was the college's support.
Any other questions, comments for Dave?
Sorry, could you repeat what you just said last year?
Last year was the first year that the state provided that kind of funding. Prior to that, the college paid for all of the support. There was no external support for dual enrollment. I mean, going way back in time.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Chancellor, anything else, or do you want to move on to the?
Just want to point out to the board a couple of things. A couple of, on the packet that you have, you can see what other colleges in Arizona are doing in terms of, various rates. Some apply, some don't get any funding, some do receive some level of state funding. Obviously, we've worked with our legislative delegation and at the state level, and both Republicans and Democrats at the state level are supportive. It's just we are all reading the news, and there's not a lot of money in that overall pot coming out of Phoenix. So just something to think about. It'd be great if we had some state funding to mitigate. But I think another thing we think about is sustainability, right? Is it each year we're going to the legislature hoping for some level of mitigation? The other thing is, as we expand out to the high schools, to different high schools, right? As that grows, the expense naturally grows for the college. So it's kind of this conundrum of you love the access, you love what's happening at the high school, there's some great opportunities there, but how do we sustain it? And as you know, you have a sense of the overall expenses at the college. So, 1.6 million each year, it's something that I'd like for the board to consider in this iterative process, as we think through it.
I have one quick question, and I know Marcy's here, but Marcy, I don't know if you can come up and share. Has the foundation ever provided any funding for the dual enrollment program in any way, shape, or form? I'm just curious.
Thank you for the question. Board Chair Taylor, Chancellor Nassy, board members, and guests. We have one fund that has been established specifically for dual enrollment students to move from dual enrollment into Pima. And that has really been spearheaded and shepherded by James Palacios and the superintendent at Sunnyside. Sorry, wrong S, Swarita. And so they have developed funds to help those students that were dual enrollment students to be able to move to Pima Community College, and immediately following their registration or their completion at high school, so they can register at less cost. And it is renewable. Superintendent Valenzuela did present that to the college or the high school superintendents when this first started, but we've not had any other school districts or private funders look to contribute to that. The fund is called Pima First, and they called their bucket Swarita Wins, and we could do that with any other school district or private donor that wants to do that for a particular district.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mine is just a clarifying question. I'm looking at the slide that you had brought up, comparing some of the community colleges with each other. Not every community college is on here, but it looks like it's really interesting. So the one column is what the students are charged. Another column is if state funding is received. You have some that are free to the students, but they receive state funding, and vice versa. It looks to me like we're the only ones that receive no state funding, but is also tuition free. Do we know if there's any colleges that were not included on that list that might be in the same boat as us?
Yeah, I don't know how comprehensive the list is. Obviously, it lists these. There's some others that we could include, right? So, but these are the ones we had ready access to. And importantly, on this one, what I would say, correction, right? We did receive a little bit of state funding last year, the first time. So maybe that's a caveat on our table there.
But that's not something we can count on.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I have a question for Ms. Halverson-Otts about the head count and then the actual number that come to Pima. So for 2024, if we had 6,024 enrolled in, dual enrollment, and that same year or the following year, only 800 came to Pima, are we tracking what happened? Like, do we know the number that transferred to the U of A, or the number that, what happened to the difference?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. We know we're doing our best to track it. We have some gaps in tracking. What I will articulate is, if you go, and I really want to just pull up that dashboard shows students that will go to the university versus Pima. And so that you can get a sense of some of our schools where, which one of those two institutions of higher education that they prefer. And then, of course, we have some students that didn't do either. And that is part of that gap in getting to our data collection. What I will also articulate again is approximately, I think it was 2 years ago, we learned that literally around 43% of our high school students were actually pursuing a higher ed. And so we can also make an assumption from that statistic from 2 years ago that they're not continuing. Now, granted, we're not tracking it right now either. And it's just a challenge because of the way we currently collect data. However, under Phil Burdick, and they're working on, and I'm stepping outside my zone a little bit, a new CMS management system where the goal is to actually start tracking the students in dual enrollment. And so hopefully that will provide us better data.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on this a little bit. So once a student leaves high school, right, we will get them eventually on a system, but it's going to be a lag. There's going to be a while. But I think we can say pretty across the country, most students that take a community college dual enrollment course in their high school are not going to that community college. I think I've seen national rates like 30 is a high. 3 out of 10 may go to that actual community college. Now, we can do something about it in that community, and that's fine, right? My kids took dual enrollment. They wanted nothing to do with coming to where dad worked. You know, they wanted to go to wherever they went to, right at their university, and that's fine, right? People can take advantage of it. But to Superintendent Costello's point, right, there are a lot of students, and it varies upon district, who that's their first exposure to a college campus, and it could be the access point, right, for them that you would never realize unless you had had that opportunity in high school. But, you know, if we could get half even to come to PCC, that would be, I think, a huge victory. But I think by and large, probably most of them do not.
Any other questions, comments? No? All right. Thank you so much. And then we will move backwards in the agenda and move back to PCC financial controls. Are you introducing this one, Chancellor, or Dave, do you just want to take a crack? All right.
Dr. B?
Got to adjust it to my height here. Good evening again. It is our pleasure, I'm including Jose Salamondo, who's right behind me, who's going to come up at the end, to provide a sort of brief overview of the financial controls and policies that are put in place to ensure strong accountability of the college's resources, particularly in the context of the governing board. Should be fairly quick. We should be out on early today, I think, because I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the overarching policies that govern the finances and the controls of the college, and then the policies that govern the audit processes at the college, and then hit a few different mechanisms that showcase the college's commitment to stewardship and transparency of the college and the public funds. So we put links in here. I don't have the policies spelled out. You can look at it on your own free time. If you're having a lot of boredom in your day, go read our policies. But to sort of summarize what the two financial controls here, the first one is really an overarching set of policies that talks about setting the budget, what the goals of the budget process, the stewardship of the college's funds in terms of making sure that revenues and expenditures are balanced, that long-term commitments are accounted for and planned for. And also delegates to the chancellor the authority to set policies and procedures in place to have appropriate financial controls, internal controls, financial processes to ensure that we're properly handling and managing the money on behalf of the college. The second one, the Board Policy 4.07, the financial stability, is one of the more important mechanisms that we put in place to track both make sure that we have strong reserves on hand, an appropriate amount of money. We've talked about it, the rainy day fund kind of concept or construct, that we have reserves on hand appropriate for the size of our organization so that we can handle an unforeseen contingent situation. Also, that would be what's expected from credit rating agencies as a financially performing organization. The credit rating agencies, the HLC, all expect you to have healthy reserves on hand. So we have a financial stability policy that is actually one of the more recently updated ones. I'll get to that at the very end of my discussion. That is based on ensuring that we have a certain days of cash on hand in terms of our annual expenses. And we have a range that we want to stay within, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. The latter two, and this is what Jose will talk to if you have more questions, those are the policies that spells out the relationship and the use of auditing, both external auditing, that includes principally the State Auditor General's Office conducts our annual audits. It also could include, if we pulled in a different firm to do a specific audit, it would include those as well. And then Jose heads up the internal audit function at the college. Some of the more like just overarching big concepts of this are the audit functions are set up both to provide any reports that they put together are reported to the chancellor and to the board. That's so that the board is aware of any issues that are going on, and then that we're remedying those issues that are identified in the audit, and that we resolve them right appropriately. Pointing out most recently that we had an audit finding in internal controls and compliance that is related to signature cards. So our banking account had former employee indicated on that. So we've developed an improved procedure. We're finalizing that procedure. It's all cleaned up. We've removed all of those, all of the concerning signatures from that. And we have a procedure now that will be in place where we have a regular time where we'll be checking that, making sure that no former employees are included on that. I can assure the board that there are other controls that we have in place that if that former employee had done anything with the account, if they had drawn any money down from the account, that there were controls in place that would have identified that immediately. But best practice, obviously, we agree with the conclusion that we needed to fix that. There was another finding on the A133 audit related to financial aid and the return of Title IV funds. This relates to a student who, this is a sampled student, so the auditors, when they do the audits, they often pull a certain number of transactions, and then based on that sample, they can then generalize it's representative of the whole. So of the 25 samples that they pulled, one of the students had withdrawn during the term and was due, the federal government was due a return of Title IV funds. We had a process in place, and there was an update to the computing systems where the systems weren't doing the same tracking they had been, so they're working on remedying that issue. We've gone back and confirmed any other cases of that. Not worried about remedying either of those two findings. I will assure the board, and I've done this in the context of the orientation and in the Finance Audit Committee. We consider audits, whether it's the internal auditor or external auditors, to be partners. They are here to ensure that we are continuously improve what we do. They identify if we have deficiencies, and we accept that and move on. We do not consider them to be adversarial or in any way. And I expect the board to hold me to account on that. Our Finance Audit Committee meets with the auditors, meets directly with the internal auditor. I'm going to jump ahead on some of the things that we do. Meets with the auditors in Finance Audit Committee, meets with the internal auditor routinely in the Finance Audit Committee. Those are the board members who are on the Finance Audit Committee. In addition, the Auditor General comes to the general board session. I believe they're going to be coming in May. Yes, because April is in 2 days. So it's in May. They'll be coming, and again, that gives the board the opportunity to hear directly from the auditor any concerns they may have. Again, my expectation is the auditor tells you that we give them what they need, we respond quickly to their needs, that sort of thing. I expect that's what you'll hear from them. A couple of other things that we do in terms of making sure that we're managing according to those policies. As you know, we have lots of conversations about budget development, what the challenges are with the budget, what the realities are, planning for the future, those kinds of things. Planning the use of college reserves. In addition, your board packets on a monthly basis have the monthly financial reports. We are in the process, just so that you're aware, of updating those and probably simplifying them. One of the mechanisms that we're going to be using, though, in that is that days of cash on hand construct that we use on an annual basis. We're going to actually start providing that on a monthly basis. That will show you two things. One is, are we within our range? The other thing that'll be informative for the board is that the cash flow varies during the year. There are times when we have tuition coming in, when property comes in, where the revenues come in, and then we're at a surplus level. There are times then when the expenses, like toward the end of the year, May and June. We don't have a lot of revenues coming in for the year, but we have expenses going out on a more routine basis. So the cash flow then goes down. So that report will be done on a monthly basis. So you'll actually be able to see sort of the normal ebbs and flows during the year of that days of cash on hand. But it's going to be within the construct of the cash on hand. I mentioned the Finance Audit Committee. That is a best practice that we have here. We're not required to have that committee. That is loosely based on Sarbanes-Oxley constructs that came out of accounting challenges in the for-profit sector. But the idea is that it gives the board members, the members who are on that subcommittee, the ability to dive in more deeply on internal audit risk, investment information, financial information, more deeply than we can in a regular board meeting. In addition to that, because we have members of the community who are experts in business audit, investment, it gives a sounding board so that the two board reps can then hear what experts also think about what's going on and can sort of get their perspective, get ideas from them, and get a sense of context. So it has been something that we created a number of years ago to ensure the community that we were transparent and we were good stewards of public funds. It has become way more than that, in that I think that group, because they govern their own charter, because they give a lot of feedback, has given very good ideas for us that we've been able to come back and bring some of their great ideas into how we operate in the finance arena in particular. Lastly, and I think this is what triggered this study session, is the idea of what mechanisms does the college have in place to ensure that we have healthy reserves on hand. So this is that Board Policy 4.07 on financial stability. This is the mechanism that says that we want to stay within our low and high measures of between 180 days and 270 days of cash on hand. That cash on hand is short-term investments, cash, and long-term investments, so it's basically your reserves. Make sure that we have at least 180 days on hand, and then once we get above 270, that's a time where we can turn around, start thinking about, okay, we've built up reserves, let's think about, should we turn around and do some one-time investing in capital projects? And so you'll see that it's gone down. It got built up as we were planning for the Centers of Excellence projects, and then now it's been spending down as we've done a number of those projects. That's the quick and dirty of it. Again, we're going to be providing this on a monthly basis now for you to also be able to see sort of how that looks on a monthly basis. And with that, I'll ask if there are any questions for me, and then Jose will come up and talk a little bit about audit.
Any questions for Dave?
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Board Chair Taylor, board members, Chancellor Nassy, colleagues and guests. My name is Jose Saldamando. I'm the Director of Internal Audit, and today I'm going to be talking about how the internal audit function supports the college as well as management with internal audit financial controls with that. First, go here to this slide here. I'm going to be talking about the internal audit board policy 7.01 internal audit. So this policy pretty much has 4 key points that can be outlined. The first one, it's related that the governing board authorized the chancellor to request internal audit to perform internal audits as well as professional services. It also outlines that those audits has to be completed in accordance with the Institute of Internal Auditor international standards. The other piece is that the internal audit has to be independent and objective and has the ability to communicate directly to the board in case when there's any conflict of interest, either part or with the chancellor. And then lastly is making sure that internal audit provide audit results to the governing board as well to the chancellor. Before I share some of the functions that internal audit provides over to management in the college, I want to start, I'm going to share something, the definition basically, or defining what's the purpose and the importance of financial controls. So the purpose of financial controls, it's very simple. It's basically to protect the assets, ensure accurate financial reporting, and prevent fraud and errors. Now, the importance for financial controls in a college settings is to comply with regulations, maintain public trust, and ensure efficient resource allocations with that. Now, I'm going to share with you just 4 of the internal audit functions that supports management here in the college. The first one is basically conducting internal audits and reviews that assesses the college operations, policies, procedures, and to make sure we're in compliance, with those areas, and to make sure we provide any recommendations related to that. This helps management to make more informed decisions, as well to want to make sure that we improve operations within the college and also provide any pretty much compliance, with those regulations with that. Some examples in regards to some of the processes that the internal audit has evaluated or assessed the financial controls. It's related to some of the processes related to the budget development and monitoring, the procurement processes, the contracting processes, as well as project management. So what we look in here, we want to make sure that we have a strong internal control structure. And some of the pieces that we assess, basically, we want to make sure that we have good policies, we have good procedures, there's segregation of duty processes involved there. We want to make sure there's periodic reconciliations within some of the key areas, as well as training. That's one of the other things that we want to make sure that we do have that in place with that. In regards to the second item or the second function that I want to share with you, in which internal audit supports management, is assessing the college exposure to potential risks, and then provide a recommendation on how to mitigate the risks. Some examples here is by internal audit completing the annual risk assessment, where risks are identified and prioritized. And the other piece is to, when there's audit findings, internal audit assess those risks, those findings based on the risk level. And then we provide recommendations based on that. The third item that internal audit supports management is supporting external independent audit reviews. So meaning with this, following up with management to ensure that plans for improvements are fully implemented. And then lastly, by conducting investigation or assisting investigation on fraudulent activities if they occur with that. Now, some of the examples in regards to internal audit functions that support college governance is by sharing reports. These reports are shared with the chancellor, the governing board, and the Finance and Audit Committee. Another item is by having ongoing conversations with the chancellor and the Finance and Audit Committee. I meet with the chancellor on a monthly basis and with the Finance and Audit Committee on a quarterly basis. And we discuss all the internal audit activities. We're talking about projects, audits, the status of all open audit findings, and any other information that is appropriate to share with the chancellor and the Finance and Audit Committee. The third item that it's important that internal audit supports governance, it's by sharing information through the internal audit newsletter. So internal audit has a newsletter that is completed twice a year, one during the spring and then the other one for the fall semester. And it provides good information that is shared to employees as well to the Finance and Audit Committee. And this information is basically set up for, it's available basically in the internal audit intranet, and also communication is done via Pima News on that. A good example in here, like in the fall 2023 newsletter, there was a topic related to understanding internal controls. So that's another way how internal audit shares college information on that. And then lastly, the other item that internal audit supports college governance is by participating in college committees. Internal audit participates in the Information Security Steering Committee, the Compliance Coordinating Team, and the Security and Access Control Work Group. The role of internal audit is basically to provide pretty much assess internal controls, either new or proposed new controls, to make sure they're appropriate with that, with the college. And then now to conclude, I just want to mention that it's important that to know that effective procedures, processes, and internal controls are a significant component of the college operation and financial reporting. Based on the items discussed, it's considered that the college has adequate procedures and internal financial controls in place for efficient operations, compliance, and risk management. So this is my presentation for today, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? No? Any final thoughts? That was the last item on the agenda, so we'll adjourn if not, but I want to give everybody a chance. Anything else? No? All right. Thank you. We're adjourned.